Welcome back, Bruins, and happy spring break to some of you. My name is Angela Scales, and I serve as the Senior Director of Bruin Connections and Alumni Career Programs here at UCLA. Thank you for joining us tonight for our lucky number 13th episode in our YouTube Live series, Bruin Career Insights. This evening, our speaker, a first-gen young professional, will discuss how his personal experiences have benefited him and helped him thrive in the boardroom. As you may already know, UCLA One is a great resource if you're looking to connect with fellow Bruins or explore the next step in your career. We also have over 500 jobs and internships posted on the site right now by Bruins for Bruins. So check it out. It's uclaone.com. Thank you to those of you who suggested topics in our RSVP form. We want to be able to customize these events to your professional interests and career needs. You can always let us know if you have a suggested topic or speaker by sending us an email. It's just careerprograms@alumni.ucla.edu. I also want to take a moment to thank our Blue, Gold, and Life members for making events like this possible. It's through your generous contributions and continued support that we're able to provide career programming and resources for all Bruins. If you're thinking about upgrading your membership, you'll see a link in the live chat. Even though this is a virtual event, we really hope it's a highly interactive one. You can ask direct questions by using the live chat, and don't be shy. We'll try to answer as many as possible. Our featured speaker tonight is Corey Matthews. Corey graduated from UCLA in 2010 with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, and in 2011, he received his Master's of Education from the UCLA Graduate School of Education and Information Studies, recently ranked the #1 graduate school in education. He also holds a Master of Arts in Public Policy from UC Berkeley. Corey currently serves as the Vice President of Leaders Up, an organization founded by the Starbucks Corporation to connect industry to community through an investment in human capital. He oversees the talent solutions and impact teams in each regional market and leads the National Technical Assistance and Consulting portfolio. A native of South Los Angeles, Corey is interested in public policy, impact, and community development, and he uses his experiences in management and research to solve some of society's most urgent issues. So with that, let's get started. Corey, think back to when you were graduating from UCLA. Did you envision that this is where you'd be now? And how has your professional path been different from what you might have expected?
That's a really good question, Angela. When I graduated from UCLA, I was hell-bent on getting a PhD in urban education. But I had amassed a ton of different experiences at UCLA, rooted in advocacy and leadership and community service and all these really hands-on types of things. I still had a very strong research acumen and level of experience, but I found quickly that the PhD wasn't going to be for me right away. So I was able to complete my thesis and get a master's degree. I moved to New York, in which I was sort of going to go into school at Columbia, but then decided at the last minute that I wasn't, and that I was going to work and I was going to do some consulting. And then I moved to the Bay Area and picked up my second master's degree before I started this position at Leaders Up as the vice president. And I would say that now it's a very unique blend of all the different things that I care about. Leaders Up sits at the nexus of big business, government, community. I get a chance to liaison with all of these different entities. I run the research and evaluation unit at Leaders Up. I do the consulting work, and I really do oversee the community-based programming. So for me, I think that everything happens for a reason, and I'm happy that it happened this way.
So I know when we connected before tonight's episode, you mentioned that you identify as first gen and you participated in the academic advancement program at UCLA. For our RSVPs, over 70% of them shared that they were first gen, and for who is going to watch tonight. So how did your experience as a first gen student at UCLA help shape your perspective?
Well, you know, perspective is everything. And if I were to think about myself as a whole person, that first generation identity is primary in that I am Black, I am male, I am from South Central Los Angeles. I come from a very loving family. I come from a family that made a lot of sacrifices to get me into the best schools. Even though they themselves had not went to college, it was still very much a goal that my parents had for me. And I think that getting to UCLA was its own journey, in that I went to one of the top schools in California. I had a 4.0 GPA, but it was not until the 10th grade where I just so happened to be walking by my school counselor, and he asked, "Hey, Corey, what school do you want to go to? You should be thinking about college." And I was like, "Oh yeah, UCLA. I heard that was a really great school." And he was like, "We got to get you into some AP classes." And I was like, "What are those?" So for me, it was this hidden curriculum that I had no idea existed. And what I learned quickly as a first generation student and even becoming a professional in the working world is that you are always going to be up against a hidden curriculum. And by virtue of the relationships that you develop, you're able to learn that hidden curriculum. And I do believe that the perspective that I bring has made me interesting enough to build some of those relationships that have really helped me out over the years.
So we got a lot of really interesting questions from students who are first gen at UCLA. And one of them was from Leon. He's a third-year student at UCLA. And he wanted to know, what do you think is the most important mistake that a first gen student should learn from?
You know, Leon, I would tell you this: not embracing the tremendous amount of opportunity that UCLA brings to bear by not fully immersing yourself into the experience. That's the biggest mistake that you can make. For my first 2 years, I toggled between being at UCLA, this very prestigious university, which was located not too far from my house. And you would often find me at home every weekend or every other weekend. And I was always playing this sort of balancing act between being an active member of my home life, keeping the same friends, doing the same types of things, and then having this very rich campus life. And it wasn't until probably my third year where I really just got pulled all the way into the experience that is UCLA. So I think that if you were able to get there sooner and allow yourself to make that break, you would greatly benefit from all that it has to offer.
That's such good advice, and it's related to something that actually came up in multiple questions around, does it matter what you major in, and what effect does that have on the experience?
You know, it's interesting. I think that as of today, unless you are engineering or nursing, because those majors go directly into becoming an engineer or a nurse, major in whatever you want. I came to UCLA wanting to be a psychology major because I remember the movie Freaky Friday with Jamie Lee Curtis. And she was a therapist and I was a peer helper in high school. And I was like, I'm gonna be her. And at that time, UCLA, I think even to this day, was #1 in psychology for undergrads. And it was scientific. It was very rigorous. I remember having to take physics. And because my grades were okay, because they were good, because I was performing well academically, no one encouraged me to really re-examine if that was the major for me. And what I did learn is that I was able to truly get those research one skills, which is the true thing that UCLA values and really wants to facilitate in its students. They want to ensure that you have research, critical thinking, problem solving skills. And I think you can get that at any of the majors at UCLA. So I would say, don't sweat it, whichever major you're passionate about. I will have to say that when I first started, I was lucky enough to meet Dr. LaTanya Reese-Miles, who I know runs the first generation experience now. And she told me about Research Rookies. And then later, the next year, when I was a sophomore, I did Educators for Tomorrow. And then after that, I did McNair. And I would tell people to this day that if it were not for me knowing all of those research skills, I don't think that I would have been as successful academically as I had been. So I say don't worry too much about your major, but get the research skills.
Definitely. So every first-gen student is multifaceted and unique because of their personal experiences, and there's no one singular identity. We got a great question from a 2008 grad. His name is Christian, and he asked, what are your top 3 tips for navigating your intersectionality? So in addition for him to being first-gen student, Filipino, gay, Catholic, low socioeconomic status, working in a predominantly white, cis-normal, affluent workspace.
I say the first thing is to own all of who you are. We live in a world that is quickly evolving into becoming one that accepts the whole person. But for a lot of times, as a person of color, you're taught to not accept certain parts of yourself. And because of that, you sort of stunt your ability to become fully self-aware. And so if I were to talk about tip number 1, self-awareness is the key tip, because from that, you're able to speak with authenticity, you're able to speak with truth, you're able to share your perspective, you're able to own it, you're grounded. The second tip would be to become comfortable using your voice. Know that your experiences is your truth and it matters. It has to matter. For diversity to work and anything beyond body politic, your perspective has to be brought to bear. And you don't realize that your responsibility is to be a voice for those who will never have access to the same tables that you have access to. So self-awareness and voice would be the first 2 tips. And then the third tip I would say is execute. You have to know how to get the work done. You have to be on top of things. You cannot miss deadlines. You cannot present something to your boss or to your colleagues that you're not proud of. You have to know how to stand by your work, because your work is ultimately a reflection of you. And because you in and of yourself are such a diverse entity, you're not realizing how much of your work is being reflected of all of who you are. And I think that those are the things that have gotten me this far. And those are the things that I consistently remind myself to stand by.
So in thinking back to your time at UCLA, you mentioned the role that LT played. Did anyone else help you along the way in kind of your personal and your career development?
Absolutely. I mean, beyond my parents, and I just remember my mom drilling into me as a kid that organization is the key to success, and being able to be organized all the time. I mean, to this day, I wake up really early and I still kind of have a bedtime. It's quite weird, but those things you never really depart too much from. I learned how to build relationships and how to go on what I call mentor hunts. I will find my own mentors. I will scout them out. I will research them. I will figure out what is it about them that they can teach me. And I think that research allowed me to have access to a lot of different faculty members. Dr. Howard comes to mind as somebody who played a very instrumental role in my development. I worked within VIPS under Dr. John Lee Tunstall and SHAPE, and I was the chair of the African Student Union. And through my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, I met members like Jeffrey Wallace, who's also an alumni, who all poured into me. They all taught me different things, whether it was knowing how to conduct research, whether it was knowing how to present myself, or even knowing how to navigate in a meeting and know how to run it. These were all things that were important to me. And so I would say I'm constantly collecting mentors. I'm constantly utilizing them. I'm constantly curious about how I can be better. And I'm not bashful about that, because nobody makes it alone.
Yeah. So that's such a good point, and something that our students and young alumni ask about a lot. How do you cultivate and maintain those relationships with your mentors?
Well, you know, it's interesting because now, and I'm not super old or anything like that or older, but technology has made us hyper connected. Now, more than then, you're able to text, you're able to email, you're able to screenshot different things. You follow a lot of your mentors on Facebook. You guys are friends. So I think just finding things that are of significance that you would like to share every few months. It doesn't have to be all the time. But like, for example, when I was graduating with my second master's, I sent them all the graduation announcement because it was just something that they would like to know about. whenever I'm looking for additional opportunities, or I am preparing for something, or anything where my world is now crossing back into that world, I want to invite them in. So it's not something that you have to manage and maintain every day, but at significant points, you have to think about, would they want to know this? And you just go with that. I think your gut tells you a lot about that.
Exactly. And how have you become a mentor in your own professional life?
Oh, absolutely. I really enjoy mentorship, not because I like to share and teach, which I do really love, but also because I learn a lot. I learn a lot, especially in my line of work now, where I'm responsible for helping corporations to connect with this next generation of the workforce. I'm often dealing in environments where I'll have 4 different generations at a table, and they all speak very different languages about workplace values and culture and perspectives. And so to the extent that I'm able to leverage my own personal experiences with those who are younger than me, I'm able to really bring to bear for them some gems of truth that I think has been quite helpful, especially around this Generation Z, as I am a millennial, and Generation Z is even very different from how I was reared.
So we got a great question in the live chat. Julie asked, what do you do for self-care, or what do you do to de-stress?
Hi, Julie. What I really enjoy doing, and I've always done as a kid, I like to read a lot. And it's something for me that allows me a little bit of escape, a little bit of creativity, imagination. I'll tell you like this, that one of the things that I enjoy the most is just being on the internet and surfing it. I love Wikipedia. Do not cite Wikipedia for my researchers out there. But just being able to think about a topic and go deep and find out different things, those are things that really give me a lot of peace. I love time with my family. I love time with my wife. I have a therapist. I've always made sure that I had a therapist. I use CAPS at UCLA. And that was my first sort of dealing with a therapist. Remember, I was a peer helper in high school. So I do believe that there's a lot of value in just having someone to talk with and help to process your emotions out loud. So all of those things.
So can you tell us a little bit about a time when your identity and your personal journey helped you through a tough situation?
Yes, I think what comes to mind the most is when I was in school, I had a lot of folks who had very different thresholds for stress. I remember being a part of group projects where people will have some type of family emergency or may have fallen ill or anything like that, where it just took them out. And for me, I've always sort of realized that I have this level of resilience that allowed me to just do and get through and sort of put things on the back burner until I can really think about them. And so it's not one particular thing, but I think in general, in managing what will be stressful events, that I have learned how to do those well. And I think that that's something that makes me quite different, and also something that I attribute to just being raised in a household where you just had to know how to go get it, no matter what. And that I appreciate.
I feel like we've also gotten questions around the concept of resilience and how you tell your story in either a job interview or graduate school interview. What kind of advice would you give in that area?
For starters, know your audience. One of the things that I learned being a student organizer, this is going back to my African Student Union chair days, was that my audience at the time was the UCLA administration, because I was interested in helping to find better ways to increase access for Black students. And I could have went in there with a lot of storytelling, but I realized that what they cared about, and which actually is pretty obviously conveyed throughout the school, they cared about the data and the numbers and the research. So to the extent that I was able to talk about that with a level of fluency, they were able to listen to me. And I think that as I worked in a lot of different jobs and had a lot of different bosses and a lot of different folks that I had to communicate with, knowing my audience first and what would at least engage their sentiment and bring them into how I'm thinking about things was the first thing. I also think that you have to become very dynamic in knowing how to tell your story in a way that communicates the strengths that you have. So whether it is a strength of resilience or patience or care for others or community mindedness or just general love, you want to tell stories that depict that, as opposed to just saying, well, I'm this community minded, loving person. How do your stories illustrate that? And I think that some training around those things is something that everybody can benefit from.
That's such an excellent point, and something that people can practice. They can think through what are those stories, and so that, like you said, it's not just an adjective, but rather something that conveys that quality. Another great question that we got in the live chat comes from Leah, and she asks, "How can science majors work in public policy?"
Oh, well, that's interesting. Well, for starters, public policy is broad. There's policy in everything. Anything that government touches, there is a policy window, some type of policy in. From what I know currently around science, is that we are trying to develop new policies to manage and contain research and development related to scientific discoveries. We're trying to figure out how to price how much science and new research should be sold for. We're in the middle of a global, I'm not going to say a global war, but I will say a culture of globalization, in which case science is something that's going to be very closely monitored by government. And so I would say that for someone interested in policy, think about what is it that you want the government and the governing policies to do when it comes to science. And that will be the way that you think about public policy in science.
Another really interesting question we got in the RSVPs, multiple people asked about ageism, including both Diana and Robin. So they wanted to know what advice you have for dealing with ageism in the workplace.
Ageism is tricky. We are at a time, from my experiences, where we have a lot of different generations working in one office. In cases we wouldn't have seen this in recent past. We have boomers who are still working when they probably want to be retired, and some of them might not want to be. We have Generation X, millennials, Generation Z, and we also have this very insidious and quite obvious thing known as technology. And technology, I believe, is the great equalizer. Because what technology has done is that it's actually made folks who are younger and a lot more tech literate a lot more important at the decision-making table. We have technology that is changing the way that we work. We have people, even the fact that we're even able to do this virtual conversation. People work remotely. People are working with different affiliates in different countries. Those are the things that makes age a little bit less of a factor. And really the things that is assumptively comes with age or being younger, such as technology, a lot more sought after. So I'd say, think about it as a value add. If you come in with a deficit mindset about your age and not able to speak with conviction and confidence about what it is that you have to offer, then age will work against you. But if you are able to identify how that company can be beneficial or benefited by your age, then I think we're in a completely different conversation, and you want to ride that wave.
I love that, figuring out, where you have that value add. This question in the live chat, we got it both in the chat, but also in our RSVP questions. Christina asked, what tactics or habits do you tap into to grow or expand your current skill set?
Great question, Christina. Like I said, I love the internet. I read everything. And also YouTube and LinkedIn Learning and Udacity and all of these platforms are all like, let me teach you how to do this. So for me, I think that for starters, reading about what is the current discourse, what the narrative is right now, what are folks talking about right now, what is relevant and in demand right now, is something that you should always pay particular attention to as you're thinking about how your skill sets are going to need to evolve in order to keep up. I've worked with a number of different partners, one of which being LinkedIn, and they specifically told me that the shelf life for a skill set is about 3 to 5 years now. People are going to need to be reskilled, retrained all the time. So adopting a natural disposition of learning, in which as a Bruin you probably already have, is important and valuable. And also one thing, and I don't want to leave this off at all, mentors. Mentors have been to places before you're going to get there, and they're going to tell you in just reflecting what would be the important things to know or what they wish they would have known. You want to heed that advice. There's a lot of things that technology can do. Technology cannot make you older. So I will say that.
So in thinking about the resources you mentioned, are there any blogs or podcasts or things in that space that you really enjoy, that you enjoy getting some of that knowledge from?
Well, I'm a little bit traditional in that I don't yet listen to a lot of podcasts, though I have some buddies who are always saying, Corey, you should check this out. Haven't gotten around to it yet, but I enjoy looking at the New York and the LA Times every day. I enjoy looking at medium.com. That's a really great sort of news, digital media website. I enjoy also, and this is probably the social scientist in me, I just go on Facebook and I enjoy scrolling through Facebook to see what are folks talking about? What do people care about right now? And going back to something I said earlier around my relationship with academia, in which I love. But one of the things that challenged me was that sometimes it felt too distant. So I think that grounding, wherever you can find the true pulse of what is relevant right now, you want to go to. And that's different for everybody. So I'm not explicit or exclusive about those things. It's just that these are some of the ways that I go about gathering information and staying up to date.
Yeah, that's so true. And something we experience too is wanting to figure out, what do alumni care about and what kinds of content are they most interested in, and social media is definitely the place to find it. Another question we got in our RSVP form came from Eric. He's a 2009 grad, so very close to your grad year. He submitted this question about what future employers are looking for in candidates. He said, what type of leadership traits would you recommend that our young grads embody while seeking employment?
You know, one of the things that's quite fascinating to me is how when I go on my LinkedIn and I look at all the major influencers and the articles that are being talked about right now, and they're all around emotional intelligence. They're all around learning how to relate to others, and not to be grossly oversimplifying it, but in some ways it sort of feels like we're asking for people to know how to treat other people right. We're asking for people to know how to be kind to other people. Now, we wrap those up in really pretty words like adaptability and collaboration and teamwork and all these things. But at the core of it, are you someone who knows how to work with others? Are you someone who knows how to communicate to a variety of different audiences? Are you someone that knows how to understand how to generate the most productivity out of yourself and your colleagues? And those are things that I think are the true metrics around leadership. Can you see the vision? Are you data driven? Those are things, of course, should be baseline. But when you push play, and I always talk about push and play, taking something out of the textbook context and being in the real world, we're just dealing with people, and people have emotions, and people have insecurities, and people have fears, and people have all of these lived experiences. And do you find a way for them to safely come to you with those things and then be able to use that in order to make them their best selves? That is what folks are paying for in the workforce.
So in thinking about some of those lessons and the mentors that you mentioned, after graduating from UCLA, have you tapped into the UCLA network in terms of some of your mentors or people who have guided you in your career?
Absolutely. I am one of those types of people that likes to stay in contact. And actually right now, my current boss is one of the mentors that I mentioned early on, Jeffrey Wallace. He was a senior when I was a freshman, and we actually got a chance to work together. And we've been doing so for the last 3 years. So if that's not an example, I don't know what else would be. But in general, I do believe that it's important to pay homage to those who have helped you in some way, shape, or form in the past. I think that Facebook was one of the very best things that could have gotten invented, because it allows me to be on Facebook and connect with old teachers and people who poured into me in some way, shape, or form. And I don't take those things lightly. So I do believe that you have to find ways to continue nurturing that relationship, even as your status in life changes. Once again, going back to the people dynamic, there is always a reason to be relatable, and there's always a reason to have an experience that you can share together.
So in thinking about the skill sets that you've been developing, what are some of the skills that you still look to improve on?
I think one of the skills that I'm looking to improve on the people dynamic is conflict resolution. I don't know what it is about conflict and yelling and tension and anything that is sort of not harmonious that just paralyzes me, but it is something that my wife has been helping me to think about differently, because she's like, conflict is good. Tension is good when it's healthy. Constructive criticism is good. And she's also in a leadership position. She is an assistant principal at a school. So she deals with a lot of dynamics as well. So I learn a lot from her and how she deals with conflict. I think that also one of the things that I'm learning about conflict is how to use it in order to distill the creativity that comes from it. I'm really good at being diplomatic. I'm not really good at calming down a lot of screaming heads and being able to see, oh my God, we're saying the exact same thing right now in this moment. So that's what I'm working on right now.
I'm right there with you. Me too.
Okay.
So kind of a fun question that we got from Julie, our Associate Vice Chancellor of Alumni Affairs. She wants to know, if you had a theme song, what would that theme song be?
Oh my gosh, Julie, what a wonderful question. I have so many theme songs that I feel probably relate to me. A happy song is the first thing that comes to mind. Probably, I wouldn't say a Disney song, because that might be too cheesy, but something along those lines. I don't know, because I don't even know the name of the song. Probably something old school. Happy Feelings or something like that. Something that talks about family and love and community. So maybe it's Love and Happiness by Al Green, potentially. So I'm going to go with that for right now, Julie.
I love it. Another really interesting question we got in the live chat, Leah is asking, you talked about openness and transparency. Can you share a time when transparency did not go so well and how you handled it?
Oh, so transparency is tricky, because to be transparent means that you're going to be vulnerable. To be vulnerable means that you are going to put yourself out there, which means that in some ways you are relinquishing control, because once you do it, you cannot control how that other person takes what it is that you're going to say and what you've revealed about yourself. So I remember specifically being in a meeting about a year ago now, maybe 9 months ago. And it was one of those highly confrontational, conflict-ridden. I remember coming home and just going to sleep. And my wife was like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, I'm just tired. But I remember being transparent in that meeting space because they said, Corey, what's wrong? You're not talking right now. You know, you're sort of shutting down because, and I'm like, well, because you guys are yelling at each other and it's making me quite uncomfortable. And that makes me uncomfortable. But they said, well, what do you want from this? Why is this not working for you? And I just sort of said, because you don't reply to emails. And because you don't reply to emails, and I really value people who work and who are people of their word and who say that they're going to do what they're going to do, who do what they're going to do. I have a problem with that. And it didn't go over so well because it sort of sounded as if I was, one, writing people off for not being responsive, and two, looking down upon people for not getting their work done. And they sort of felt some type of way about it. But I just share with them that I don't know what it is. Maybe it's my rearing. I just have severe trust issues when it comes to being let down and disappointed in the workplace. And this is indicative of that. So we had it out. We were able to share. I think that what you should do in a time where transparency doesn't go over the way you really would like it to go is to first take a step back and process with yourself what you wanted it, how you wanted it to go, what you intended to get out of that. And then you go and you talk to the person. Because oftentimes you'll find that you're putting an assumption or a preconception of how they might have perceived something, and it may not be that accurate. We're really not mind readers, believe it or not.
That's so true. And not being afraid to maybe be direct and have that conversation instead of relying on those assumptions. Another question that we often ask speakers, and I love to ask, is if you had an extra hour in the day, what would you do with it?
Well, I imagine some people will say, I would do the things that I love. I would, read more, write more, talk more. What that question doesn't get at is the amount of energy one would have to live out a 25-hour day as opposed to a 24-hour day. So for me, I would probably say I would, one, sleep, or I would do something that's quite healthy for me that I should do more of, go to the gym.
And actually thinking about that and balance overall, do you have any tips around work-life balance? It's such a hot topic, but in terms of your career and your time since UCLA, what have you learned in that space?
Angela, that's a great question. In fact, the new narrative is around work-life balance being obsolete, and what's being now the norm is work-life integration is what they're calling it. But needless to say, either way, the thing that I have learned over the years is that you have to be clear about your boundaries, because your job is to protect yourself. And that does not mean that folks are out to, have bad intentions towards you, but just by design. Work is designed to get as much out of you as possible. Companies are ran that way. And culturally, that's sort of what we value. We have this cultural appetite for being busy all the time. But listen to yourself. That little voice that you drown out with music or coffee or whatever is actually your internal compass. And it tells you it's okay to rest right now. It tells you, you know what, I need to take a walk and recharge. Or it tells you, I'm done for the day. I have nothing left in me to give. It's something that I'm still working on, but it's something that I pay very close attention to. I used to be the type of person that would literally work myself into the ground. Even as a student, I was a quite serious student. I remember that I would just have to get sick. And when I got sick, my wife says I'm a big baby about it, but I would literally hate everything and everybody while I'm sick. I can't believe this is happening to me. It's so unfair. Is this really what life is about? Oh my God. And then once I'm not sick any longer, I'm back at it. So before you get yourself sick and bedridden, you might just want to slow down when that little voice says, hey, it's time to slow down. And then let that be okay, because it is.
I love that. I'm guessing you didn't get a lot of sleep while you were a student at UCLA.
Yeah, you know, I woke up so early, Angela. I don't know what it is, like 5 o'clock every day, all the time, even on the weekends, even after a party or something, always. And so I didn't get a ton of sleep. And I just remember going back to what I spoke about earlier around embracing the opportunity. I was so serious when I got to UCLA. I even remember my advent weekend. And I have to thank my now friend and then mentor, Richard, who was a year older than me. He was my person who came and got me for admin weekend and was supposed to go through the whole weekend of programs. You know, Angela, I summed up admin weekend in 5 hours. We took a whole detour. I was in the financial aid office. I wanted to go to the housing. I went to a panel. And then I grabbed a sandwich and I said, I'll see you in the fall. And he was like, you're not going to stay for the weekend? I was like, no, I have all of my things worked out. So I was kind of serious even like that at that time.
So as we wrap up, you know, what would you say are the top 3 things that you want Bruins to leave this discussion with?
You know, I thought very deeply about this takeaway because I believe that there is true value in our diversity, in our lived experiences, in our perspectives, in our norms, in our cultural habits, our attitudes, everything. And I think that if nothing else, the 3 things that you should learn is to, 1, fix your mindset. Know that you are valuable. Know that there is a reason for your voice to be heard, for you to exist, for you to be present always. That's the first thing. The second thing is to commit yourself to giving it your all in anything that you do. Because if you did your best, no matter how it comes out, you can stand by, I did my best. And I wish I would have known these things because I would have did things differently. But at that time, I did the very best that I can. And then the final thing is to build those relationships because life is a game full of hidden curriculums, full of it. In the workforce, in school, in marriage, everything has a hidden curriculum. And if you isolate yourself from people and you don't build those relationships, you will learn the lesson probably a lot later than you should have. And that will damage you in the end. So those are my 3 things.
I love that. And I love that hidden curriculum concept. I'm gonna add that to my repertoire.
Okay,
Well, thank you so much, Corey, for sharing your insights and your advice. To everyone who's watching, thank you again for joining us and participating in the discussion. If you missed a portion of tonight's event or you want to share it with others, you can find the recording on our UCLA Alumni YouTube channel. Also, we want your thoughts and ideas for upcoming topics, and it's through your suggestions that we're able to tailor these events to your interests and your career needs. So send us an email at careerprograms@alumni.ucla.edu. Thank you again to Corey and everyone for being a part of tonight's discussion. And once again, thank you to our Blue, Gold, and Life members who make programming like this possible. We'll see you again on April 19th for our next episode in the Bruin Career Insights series. Have a great evening and go Bruins!